Hello beekeepers, I'm Christine from Rushing River Apiaries, and today I'm just going to show you a little bit of what we do for our fall prep with our hives. Just for reference, we're in northwestern British Columbia in Terrace. It's the first week of September. We pulled our honey off about between 2 and 3 weeks ago, and since then we've been feeding 1-to-1 syrup to our hives. And the purpose of that 1-to-1 is to keep the queen laying a little bit later into the year. So once those natural nectar and pollen sources start to disappear, then the queen will begin kind of her winter shutdown and starting to lay winter bees. By prolonging that, by feeding 1-to-1 and some pollen, we prolong that period so she doesn't start to lay her winter bees until a little bit later. And that of course shortens up the period those winter bees need to survive. So they're well fed with 1-to-1. They've been taking it down really well, and now after today we'll transition to 2-to-1, which is the more typical fall feed, and the feed that they will start to use and store for winter to make sure they are good and full. Our daytime highs right now in this area are right around 15 degrees, and nighttime lows, we're not hitting 0, but we're kind of in the lower single digits here in that Celsius. You'll notice that I have all my gear on today, and I have my smoker lit. Bees are at their crankiest this time of year, so I'm taking all the precautions. It's also best to wait until you have fed if you've pulled your honey to do this, because they will be extra cranky if they're unfed and their honey is missing. So just feed around and wait a few days before you do any real work inside the hive after that honey pull. As far as hive strength, what you want to see is at least 4 frames of brood, mixed stages, in order for your hive to be viable through the winter, and then of course evidence of a laying queen. If you do only have 4 or 5 frames of brood, then you'll want to overwinter in just one box, and they can still make it through just fine as long as they've got lots of food packed around them. One of the biggest principles of overwintering bees is no empty space. So it's much better off to have a small colony in one box than to have them in 2. But of course, if you have lots of bees and lots of food, then 2 is pretty ideal for overwintering. We've got most of ours in 2. We overwinter some in little 4, 5, and 6 frame nukes, and that's also very viable. It's all about kind of that ratio of bees to space. So today I'm going to be adding 2 pollen patties per hive. You'll notice that I'm putting them in between the 2 boxes. The only reason for that is we find if we put them right under our top feeders that it creates more gaps that predators can get into. We've got all kinds of yellow jackets and bald-faced hornets trying to get in anywhere they can in our yards right now, so we really make sure everything is sealed up well. And I'm going to put 2 apivar strips in the bottom box, and I'll talk a little bit about mite treatments once I get this in here. I'm going to put 2 in the bottom box, evenly spaced, and then I'm going to evenly space 2 in the top box. Apivar, you want to use a strip, 2 strips for every 4 frames of brood, so that tends to be kind of 2 per box, top and bottom, and you just want them evenly spaced in there. Apivar is our fall treatment of choice for this year. It is always a good idea to mix up your mite treatment a little bit so they're not building resistance to any one treatment. Some other popular ones are Formic Pro and of course oxalic acid as a vapor. We prefer to use Formic Pro in the spring because we have seen a lot of supersedures from that and a lot of queen failures, and we know that this time of year our queens or our hives don't have time to raise themselves a new queen that can get through winter. So we opt for Apivar, which we find a little gentler on the bees. And then we'll follow up with an oxalic acid treatment probably in November once we know that our hives are good and broodless. Now, I've just put this feeder back on empty for now. We like to feed at night, so we'll come around in the evening once fewer bees and wasps are around, and we'll fill it up with our first round of 2-to-1. We'll probably give them 2 rounds of that before we call it a winter. Now, the last thing that I want to do before I close them up for good is I want to take a really close look around everywhere that the boxes meet and make sure that they're well lined up, and especially that there are no cracks anywhere. If there's a crack big enough for a bee to get in it, that's really going to encourage robbing. And so if you do find any cracks, we just use tuck tape to seal them up, and that seems to work very well. The bees will start to propolize them as well, but that'll give them a chance to do that before anything starts to come in. I hope that was helpful. I'm sorry I haven't been making as many videos as I had hoped to since spring. Things get busy when my kids are home from school. But definitely, if there's any questions that you have or other little videos that you might like to see, especially about this winter preparation, please let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to follow up. Also, if you don't already, then give me a follow on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, because I do tend to post a lot of educational content there as well. It's easier to do those little snippets than longer videos. Thank you!